All right. We're doing this live, and we are here. Very fortunate to have Jenny Gage, interim second herald of the Church of Korihor. As soon as we can figure out a way to do the ordinations, we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to do like a digital online ordination. Jenny, what do you think about that? Because I was thinking when I'd come down to Tucson, we'd just do it in person, but we don't have the time, man. We got to get things going. You know what I
Sounds good.
mean?
Well, I was thinking that we were both going to meet in like Hawaii or something and do it, get a little winter
Oh,
vacation out of this, but I don't have the funds and
this is why we have Jenny here making decisions, is because she comes up with better ideas than I do. No, that's the new plan. We're going. I'll meet you on Maui. Have you ever been to Maui?
so when I was a rich Mormon trad wife, I spent summers on Maui every year. That's so yeah. When school got out, we would take our whole family over and stay in a beautiful multi-million dollar home overlooking the ocean. And now I am a broke ex-Mormon, ex-trad wife, and I spend my summers watching Netflix and laying by the pool.
That's
Joe,
cool.
this is hashtag reality Sunday.
I love it. Well, a fellowship, we are very fortunate to have Jenny Gage here with us right now. She's going to be doing the announcements for the church this sermon, and I'm going to finish wrapping up. I've been up since like 6 a.m. trying to get things going ready for us. So I'm like, yeah, I know. It's an insane amount of work that actually goes into Sunday sermon, but I'm going to wrap up a couple of things while she'll share some enlightenment with us. Welcome, everyone. I'll be in the comments. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, Jenny Gage.
Good morning, everyone. Joe, it's kind of funny how that I am online reaching millions of people all the time. And the minute we're in a church setting and then you just put me in front of everyone, it kind of gives me panic. Preaching my sermon a month ago, that first sermon that I did, was the most scared that I have been in a really long time. And again, like I'm in front of a camera all the time, but everybody, hello, happy Sunday, or whenever in the future you're watching us. I wanted to go through just a couple of announcements, a little challenge this week. And I want to lead with, I know that a lot of people are watching us for the first time, joining us for the first time. And I've been sharing on my social medias and with personal friends, and like some of my closest friends that I'm asking them to come check us out and join us for our Godless sermons and kind of, get on board with some of the things that we're doing in the space that we're trying to create for the religiously unhoused. And so I wanted to start today just with the why behind what Joe and I were doing. And Joe mentioned that he'd been up since 6 o'clock this morning, just getting ready for the Sunday sermon and all of the logistics that go into live broadcasts in general as a creator. I don't know how many hours this week we've spent talking, Zooming, back and forth, sharing ideas, and then individually researching as we try to carve out this little space. And I know that I've had a couple of my friends, once they land on our page and go through our beliefs and stuff, who tell me, I thought in the beginning that maybe this was just a joke. The Church of Korihor, who's a figure from the Book of Mormon that Joe's going to be talking about here in just a little bit. I thought it was a joke. And then I get on your website for your church and I realize that there is a lot of intentionality behind what Jenny and Joe are trying to create. And then people telling me that they were watching some of the sermons and reading through stuff and crying and feeling like they've finally found their homes. And I just wanted to talk about why we're doing what we do. First of all, this is all Joe's love child. This is Joe's project. He has spent countless hours and then just invited me to come join him in the little capacity that I'm involved in. So I can't take the credit, but for a long time, since leaving the Mormon church 6 years ago, and then breaking up with Jesus 2 years ago, and finding myself as a 48-year-old woman out there in the world without the comfort of knowing why I'm here, knowing that there's a God watching and holding me in his hands, knowing that when I die or when my best friend dies or my grandma dies, that they're going to be waiting in paradise on the other side of some veil for me. When I lost all of that comfort, life became really scary. Once I worked through that and discovered my own faith and purpose, my everything that we talk about in our atheist church that became foundational for me, I still had so much grief over losing my community. All of my followers know I've been shunned by my family. My Mormon friends are terrified of me because not only am I an apostate, but I'm an ex-Mormon creator. who is actively involved in legislation against the church, in making sure that churches are held accountable for the things that they do. My Mormon family doesn't like that, and I found myself very much alone. And it's funny how that there are times throughout the week that I wish that I still had, like on Sundays, that I had somewhere to go, that I could get a little bit of inspiration and have conversations where I don't have to have a faith in Jesus or God or a Book of Mormon or a Bible. I wished that I had something inspiring and consistent where other people were gathering. I listen to plenty of podcasts. I'm constantly going through audiobooks, and I have access, as we all do, to so many streaming sources of inspiration and enlightenment, but it's very lone. It's very isolated. I'm not listening to a Brene Brown podcast with 500 other Brene Brown followers. It's just me alone in my room. And as Joe and I began to kind of talk about the dream that he had to carve out this space, I realized that this was exactly what I had been looking for. I just want somewhere where I can gather with other people who want to live the best lives that we can, get the most out of this experience on earth, but are not able to, or not willing to, or just don't see the evidence to believe in any type of a deity. So that is why we do everything that we do. We are hoping to carve out space for you. If you are a nun, not the Catholic type, but the fastest growing segment of religious population in America, those who are religiously disaffiliated, the post-religious, if you are a former Mormon, if you are a lifelong atheist, if you are an agnostic, if you don't know what you are, if you still identify as a follower of Jesus, but you don't see the reason to go to a church on Sunday, have membership, pay tithing, all of those different things, we are creating a space where you'll see familiar faces, where we are all equal, where you have just as much right to share your beliefs, teach our Godless sermons on Sundays, and participate in events as anybody else, and where hopefully we can create some cohesion and some community and replace some of those things that we lost to religion. So that's what we're hoping to do here in our space. And I'm so grateful for everybody who gives us a try and spends a little bit of time with us. Like, I know the first date is always a little bit awkward. Hopefully you'll come back for a second date. We do broadcast live. We have our Sunday sermons and then a Wednesday mini devotional, and our first church potluck, which will be a virtual Zoom event hosted by me, is going to be the last week of February. Those announcements will come up here on the Church of Korihor YouTube and other sites this weekend. So we'll be posting all the links to that. Everything's free. Bring your own dinner, sit down on Zoom, and we'll get to know each other and have a little bit of guided conversation, a little bit of support group, but then just a lot of fellowship. So that's coming up soon. And I wanted to offer a challenge every week. Joe was gracious enough to let me kind of come up with some of my own things to offer to people. So Joe is currently running the blanket drive, and I know that he's going to talk about that a little bit here and there. As an atheist church, we are committed to being fully transparent with any money that goes through our church. All operating costs, licensing, tech time, all those different things are being absorbed just completely by Joe and a little bit by myself at this point. And we will, throughout the existence of the church, be doing fundraisers where we all come together to do good in our local communities. They will always be transparent. We will not have a general fund for anything unless there's something very specific that we know the dollar amount that we're going to raise money for. Full transparency with everything. Once the project closes out, we'll close it out and we'll tell you what we're doing with any funds that roll over. So this is directly through Joe. He has found the fabric. He has found a very efficient method of making those blankets so that we can hand deliver them to people in Utah. I work with homeless people all the time. There's about 6 in my local community that I help take food to, that I have their cell phone numbers, who are like my personal friends. I cooked dinner for a man on Friday night with my daughter and delivered him a backpack full of food to get him through the weekend. I have other individuals that I do things like that for. And one of the things that I miss about church is having people that are working with me. We get more done when we work together. But unfortunately, some of those organizations, charities, churches are pilfering money, buying stock in Tesla, buying land in Nebraska, building City Creek malls. And the money that I donated to the Mormon church, hoping that it was just helping the needy, has actually gone into the coffers of an organization making itself rich. We pledge to never do that. And we hope to create a space where you feel comfortable coming together with us to do a little bit more good than we can do on our own. So Joe is handling every single blanket. We're going to deliver those to people. I know here in Arizona, every time I'm working with people, and it's Arizona, it's warm during the day. We don't have the snow that they do in Utah. They're always asking me for socks and blankets. Those are two staples that if you do not have a home, you cannot get enough of. You wear them out, they get stolen, and you can just never have enough. So we are taking blankets. That clothing drive link is everywhere. Joe can tell you more about that. And my challenge for the week is always going to be more individual. Of course, I'm partnering with Joe on everything that we do as a church, but I'm always going to have like the Jenny highlight person of the week or highlight challenge of the week. So this week, my challenge to you is a $20 tithe. We don't want it. We don't want to know anything about it. But when I left the Mormon church, I came up with a dollar amount that every single month I'm still giving back to somebody. That amount's always been tiny because I've been broke as a joke since leaving the church and getting divorced. But it helps me keep focused on making sure that I'm still helping in my community by having that monetary challenge every month. And I love it. I'm always looking for creative ways to spend that money in the most impactful way. I spend all of my money on single moms, almost always, except for some of the homeless individuals that I don't count. I have a couple of friends that help me, and yes, that's money coming out of my bank account, but that's not my monthly challenge. So this week, I would like to challenge you to take $20, set it aside to help somebody. This can be, for me, sometimes I know I was going through a smoothie drive-through one day, and as the girl was getting my stuff, she had told me she was a single mom. Obviously, she's a minimum wage worker. It was around Thanksgiving time. I asked her if she could take a tip. I gave her a $20 tip. One time we gave also a $20 tip to Brody's hairstylist at Great Clips because she said that she had all these kids at home and no husband. And I knew that she probably could use $20 towards something. Sometimes it's somebody who just needs lunch or some other creative way to help somebody. So your challenge this week is a $20 tithe that you are going to spend directly on another human being. Get creative. I'm sure you'll come up with more exciting ways than me. And next week, I'd like to hear about it. My criteria is it does have to be somebody who has real need and not just someone who's going to go and buy themselves a $10 Starbucks or something. I try to look for those people that really lack in resources. And if you want to spend more than $20, then certainly do that. Oh, I just lost my light, Joe. And we'd love to hear about it next week. So this week is the $20 challenge. And we hope that you get something out of this and that you have those great feelings of helping other people. Joe, I lost a light.
That's groovy. You got that inside light. You got the internal light. It works.
Right.
She's got the light of reason. Hey, this has been great. Guys, see what I'm talking about when I say, look, we got to have Jenny doing things for the church because she comes up with better ideas than I do. This thing was like, she hit me with this out of left field, and this morning I was like, damn, my announcements were like, I made changes to the website. And she's like, got this like spiritual journey for us all. I'll take the $20 challenge. I'll do it.
Wait, Joe, you didn't let me finish. Because now it's time for my wrap up and turn over to the amazing Joe. And Joe, I appreciate that you always like, oh, this is why we have Jenny, or this is why we have Beth, or whoever. And I love that you build everybody up. But I just want to take a moment to say that in the, I don't know, couple of months, several months since you and I met, and then since you invited me to help create this space, rarely have I been more impressed with another human being. And I think that there are people out there who kind of toot their own horns a lot. There are people who have easy lives, who have all the resources and the health and happiness and everything that they possibly could ever need. And so, yes, they are excellent, amazing people in leadership because they have a vast amount of resources and privilege to help them be in those positions of leadership. You are one of like the quietest, most humble human beings that I've ever met, who has a lot of challenges. There are things that as we talk, I mean, I'm over here breaking a rib and you're dealing with stuff, and like we're kind of duct taped together in our personal lives through no fault of our own. You deal with challenges, and you have one of the most intentional, focused lives of anybody that I've ever worked with. And like, first and foremost, when you texted me and said, "Hey, would you like to be part of this?" That is why I said yes, because the intentionality, you are always focused on building other people. You are always focused on, yeah, the world is a little bit crazy, but I think that I can make this little space that I'm in today a little bit better. And the heart that you have for inspiring people without any manipulation, any coercion, any like, you have to believe me or you have to love me. You just want to inspire for no reason at all, no strings attached. And I am constantly impressed by you. Also, I think you have an IQ of like 180 probably. The wealth of knowledge that you have is unbelievable. And Joe is amazing. We're all blessed to have him. I hate the word blessed. That was my Mormon self. I don't know. It's great to know you, Joe.
Thank you,
It's
man.
great to know you. I deeply appreciate everything that you do. And of all of the projects that I'm currently working on, some of which actually pay money are really cool and that people would love to be involved in these projects, our little church of Korihor is my favorite thing right now. I am obsessed. It is all I talk about with anybody. People don't even know half of the other stuff that I'm doing. I am just so happy to be part of this. And you're a big reason why. So thank you, Joe, for everything you do. I would like to turn the time over to Joe, who will be leading the sacrament today.
Thank you, Jenny.
I'm going to hop off and just listen.
Sounds good. It's good to see you. Man, do I deserve all of that? I don't know. But I'll tell you what we're going to do here. We are going to sermonize. I am very, very fortunate to have had Jenny on the show today and to have Jenny in our work. And we're going to be talking some more about what's going to come up, what's going to be coming down the pipe with her ordination and some of these other things. I'm going to start sermonizing here. Once I get going, I'm going to ask that people kind of like take over, like commenting amongst yourselves. I know that Tessa's great at that. Jean's great at that. Lisa's great at that. And, maybe if Jenny has the time to chime in the comments, kind of take care of each other over in the comments because I get distracted when I look over at them. So I'm going to stop looking at them. So I afterwards, we're going to make a couple. Well, I might as well make a couple of quick announcements. I'm going to go ahead and turn my comments off. I'm just going to show you a couple of things here and turn them off for me. I don't know why I had to tell you that. Okay. Okay. So let me get back over here. I'm doing uploads. I'm hoping that I continue to keep a stream. My upload is done. I haven't even checked that video yet. And I just published it. Okay. Let me share with you the website. Our website, as you guys know, is korihor.org. You'll see it there on your screen. I'm going to share my screen. I want to show you some things that I've been working on. When I say I got up early at 6 o'clock this morning, it's because I have been working and busting my hump on this page. Okay, so here's how you get here. Let me just go back. Korihor.org. Okay, so you're going to see on the church's website here that we have a banner now across the top. I've decided for a while at least, if not forever, we're going to use this top space to just publish what we're passionate about, what our humanitarian work is, whatever we're doing right now. It's going to be right at the top of the page. And then from there, the first section is going to be Who is Korihor? After this sermon, I'm going to make a devotional video like the We're Going Home video that I'm hoping to show you guys here at the end of this. I haven't reviewed this video, but if it's in any way halfway decent yet, we're going to just publish it. We're going to start pushing it to the whole world because this video just it lights my soul on fire and makes me so happy. And I think that it will make a lot of people just so excited about Korihorism and what we're doing, getting involved in what we're doing. Anyways, so when one goes down so eventually this will be a video. They'll have the text still, but you'll be able to have a video where you will play from this sermon, hopefully, who is Korihor, so that people can get to know Korihor, and I can stop answering that question, even though I love it. I'm only kidding. I love that. I love answering that question, but at least now I'll be able to answer it to millions of people, and I do mean millions. Okay, then if somebody goes through this and they're like, "Oh yes, I'm 100% about it. I want this," they can click "Join Us," and it takes them to this page where they will see the oath of reason. This is what you have to. This is what you recite to join the Church of Korihor. There's a brief description. Again, there will be a video here, so those people who aren't into reading as much can get the whole missionary experience. Basically, this is our knock on your door and like, do you have a moment to talk about our Lord Korihor? Even though we don't worship Korihor, Korihor is a fictional character from the Book of Mormon. And then if they say, yes, I love this, they click take the oath. Now this, because I am signed in as me, it takes me right to the form. And this is where they will be able to click upload video. They can record a video of themselves taking the oath of reason. You click this button and it will upload the video. And then you just enter in how you want your name to appear on your certificate of conversion, how you want your name to appear on a certificate that we send to the church if you want us to send it to a church. You put in your email address that you want it sent to. You make sure you click this button that says that you're over the age of 18, that you agree to abide by the bylaws of the church. And then you put in the address or name of any entity. Like, for example, if you want us to send a copy of your certificate to membership records of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, put Mormon Church in there. And then you can give a donation. You can select $20, $50, $100, enter any amount that you want in there. You can up to, I think, something like $50,000 if, whatever. And this will go to the heraldic promotional budget. I'm playing around with different names for it. But basically, none of that money goes to me. None of that money goes to Jenny. That money goes to a budget that will advertise the church to more people and get our services out there, get our humanitarian work out there. Basically, it goes to Google, but we're directing it so that we can get the work out there in front of more people. And one of the amounts you can give is $0. Nobody's going to require you to do any of this. So to get to this page, I'm logged in, so it lets me right in. To get to this page the first time, it will pop up and say, hey, you have to be a contributor for $2 a month. That is like all that we ask is, please, if you want to join the church, please help us out by giving $2 a month to have an account. I just realized that I probably showed you all of that. Oh no, it was up there. You guys were able to see all of that? Yes? Don't actually sign with your hand. I can't see you. But yeah, okay. Hopefully you guys were able to see all of that. Or were you not? Were you guys able to see like the button? You saw all of that. Okay, great. So basically everything that you can do in person to join the Church of Korihor, you can do online without having to actually go and attend a service, so that you can see so you can do everything. So you can join the church online anytime is basically the point. So that's what I've been busting my hump trying to make work, and it's been surprisingly difficult. The other thing that I have done for this week is I have a new hymn for us and to show you and for us to sing along to. It's called More Money Than God. I love it. I had debuted an early version of this on Wednesday service, our first Wednesday service. I've already taken that video down because I didn't look great in it. And frankly, I wasn't really ready. So this coming Wednesday, we'll do our first Wednesday service again. And we'll do it completely new. But I wanted to share this with you. Then I will talk about, I will sermonize for us. Still, Jenny's favorite is Lick My Cupcake. Yeah, it is a good one. More Money Than God is probably going to become my personal favorite, but that's because I don't have as much religious trauma built up in the lit cupcake thing. But oh, I do love me. I do love me some More Money Than God. This is such a good one. So yeah, so I'm going to throw to that. Then we will sermonize. And then at the end for our closing hymn, before we go to doing oaths of reason, if people have filled out the form for the oath of reason, or if they do while we are sermonizing today at korihor.org, hop into the StreamYard link, or if somebody wants to hop up here and witness to Korihorism, that how much you love Korihorism, we'll be doing that at the end as well, kind of a linger longer kind of thing, if you want to. But the link to the StreamYard is in the description. And for our last hymn, I am going to show you the We're Going Home devotional video, which I think is done. I may tweak it a little bit and republish it, so don't hold me to that. But I'm going to show you this video that lights my soul on fire. And so, for now, More Money Than God.
We built this hall with borrowed bills, wrote these songs on broken windowsills. Our altar's made of old tin foil, a godless church built on digital soil. But if the poor church mice who passed those plates woke up with a Robin Hoods in their face, we robbed St. Peter right down to the floor. Finally make their God stand for something more. Oh, we'd fleece Mammon's coffers, their starving flock to feed, send them back to Jesus without their means. So those Judas steeples into unholy sod, at last we'd have more money than God. If Uncle Sam had their money, he could feed the folks they don't. The godly men get elected so that they won't. While they dance round the mountain with their golden calf, will cast their tablets down on Yahweh's behalf. When saints who pay to pray in their pews look to Korihor, get some good news. Oh, we'd fleece Mammon's coffers, their starving flock to feed, send them back to Jesus without their means. So those Judas steeples into unholy sod, at last we'd have more money than God. Their golden gates won't let us in, nor the widows might redeem their sins. They're grabbing images, pain and hell so bold, but golden plates can't indulge their souls. With their 30 pieces of silver will escape their hell. If they try to stop us, we'll ring their bell. If they get up the nights on their graves, we'll trot. Finally have more money than God.
Woo! Now come on. Don't tell me we don't have a good time. All right. Let's do this, my friends. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing with you. We are going to sermonize. Let us present. Don't look at this. Boom. Okay. Let us go. All right. Wasn't that good? Oh, such a great song. Such a great song. Thank you, my fellows, for being here at the beautiful Sunday sermon today. I want to tell you, I'm going to close this because otherwise I have too much fun hanging out with my friends. So, who is Korihor? I want to tell you today about a man who never existed, and his name was not Korihor. Well, it was Korihor. But first, I want to explain this in a way that makes it really simple. Okay? Do you guys remember when George Carlin did this bit about the Invisible Man? Let me recapitulate it. It'll be wrong. I'll do it wrong, but it'll be almost as funny. Ready? Here it goes. Religion, George Carlin says, has convinced people that there's an invisible man, and he's up there in the sky looking down at you all the time. And he has 10 things that he does not want you to do. And if you do those 10 things, then he has a place of fire and burning and torment and suffering for you forever and ever and ever and ever. But he loves you. He loves you, and he needs money. Build a whole world in only 6 days. Just shit with money. Okay? George Carlin, I put to you, did that better than anybody. The funny thing about it, though, is over 100 years before George Carlin did that bit, it was done by somebody else. And that person was Joseph Smith. Yeah, that Joseph Smith. Go figure. And of all places, in the Book of Mormon, and the person that is the character who does this bit is a man whose name was Korihor. And I'm going to give you a brief encapsulation of what happens to Korihor. Korihor is described as Antichrist, or an Antichrist, meaning that he taught people to think critically about God, about Christ, which in the story is supposed to come over 100 years in the future in the Book of Mormon. And he teaches them to think critically. At the end of his having taught this, we are told in the Book of Mormon that the government couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't stop him because there was a law saying that the law could have no hold upon a man for his belief. Nonetheless, as soon as he goes around starting to teach people to think critically about God, about the church, about what the priests like Alma, the prophet, want them to be doing with their, to do with their lives, they arrest him, which we're told is against the law. But they're just like, forget it. Just break the law, basically. And so they arrest him and they bring him before 3 different Christian leaders. One's name is Ammon, who is noted in his book, in the Book of Mormon, for being very brave because he cut the arms off of something like 200 thieves or something, or would-be thieves. But Ammon won't even talk to him. He just sends him away. And he's sent bound to a man named Gedona, who asks him why it is that he says things that bring people down. And Korihor responds to him that he didn't, that he's just teaching them to think critically, and then shares some critical thinking with Gedona, who decides, whoa, this guy's above my pay grade, and arrests him and takes him and kicks him up to Alma in Zarahemla, where Korihor defeats Alma in a debate, an epic debate that, frankly, I tried like hell not to read for about 20 years of being a conscious, awake Mormon. Because, frankly, this chapter of the Book of Mormon is so incredibly difficult to get through when you are a believing Mormon who has any intellect whatsoever. A surface reading of it by a casual reading member might look like this guy Korihor is just vicious and evil, but he didn't really say anything evil. He only taught critical thinking skills, and then argued to these Christian leaders that what they were doing by encouraging people and holding people hostage spiritually and emotionally, this emotional blackmail, was wrong. That it was wrong, especially because they were profiting from it. And really nothing that Korihor did is in any way less than an indictment against pretty much all religion as it is today. And I hate what happened to him. Now, again, this is a fictional character in a book I am not convinced should have ever been considered to be historical by anybody. But from the time I was a Mormon till now, I had a hard time not being in love with Korihor, because Korihor says some of the most important things, and I'm going to share those with you when we're done with this part of the story. I want you to be thinking, though, while I'm telling you these teachings, of what happens at the end of the story. At the end of the story of Korihor, Alma, who is a wicked Christian sorcerer, stretches forth his hand and gives him a sign that God is real to win the debate. Now, the debate is about Korihor's teaching that one, in order to believe that God is real, has to have either empirical evidence that God is real, or at least rational evidence. That is to say, something that you can see, something that you can perceive with the senses, that's empirical. Or something rational, which is to say something logical, where it's like, okay, maybe you can't see evidence of God, maybe you can't experience evidence of God or of Christ, but you should at least be able to, it should at least make sense that the things that are happening in the world as they are happening, or as they would be happening, have to be this certain way and should make sense. Now, most people who believe in God believe they have, some kind of answer to these questions. Or they say, if these questions had answers, it would deplete your faith, and you need faith to be saved. So this is what's known in theological terms as God's hiddenness. God is hidden from us, so he makes things difficult for us, like planting dinosaur bones into the earth when it isn't real, or making the earth look like it's round, or making, whatever it may be. God does all these things so that we will know to trust him and trust the Bible and not trust science. And this is where religion begins to deteriorate into one of the most dangerous things. And so I believe that Korihorism is a solution to those hypocrisies of faith and church as it has been, and it's for that reason that we named the church after him, after Korihor. Now, Korihor, I asked Britt Hartley when she put to me that we needed a shared myth. And last week we shared that the shared myth of Korihorism is actually not Korihor. I had asked her, why shouldn't it be Korihor? And she basically made it clear, because you don't believe in Korihor. Well, sure, I believe in Korihor. She's like, you're just reliving the mistake of the Satanic Temple, she put to me. And that was true, and that was a concern. And she said, because the Satanic Temple, if you don't know, is an atheist church. They don't actually believe in Satan. And she says, and it's not something that you can educate children with. It's not something that you can educate each other with. It's not something you can witness to. And so that's the reason why I said, oh, you're right, it's not Korihor then. But I believe that Korihor is part of the creation myth of the Church of Korihor. Does a person say that they have myths about their own religion? Sure they do. It happens all the time. You can ask Buddhists, they'll tell you about their mythology. You can ask pagans and like Wiccans, they'll tell you about their mythology. You don't have to believe that these creatures were real, that these people were real. Okay. Now, here's the story about what happens with Korihor. After Korihor wins the debate with Alma, I think Joseph Smith tries to portray Alma as being embarrassed. And he decides he's going to strike Korihor mute. And so he stretches forth his hand, and with the power of God, takes away Korihor's voice as proof to him that God is real. And then Korihor takes a tablet and begs Alma to give him back the use of his voice, which is his only means of support. And Alma tells him that he will not, because if he did, then Korihor would just go and start leading the hearts of the people away again. So let it be according to God's wisdom. Let God, if it is his will, give Korihor back the use of his voice, which in the story he never does. And then it says twice in the story at the end that Korihor had to go house to house begging for his food and to sustain himself. And then at the end, he is trampled to death. Now, in Mormonism, this story is a big riot. It's hilarious. People talk about it all the time. They'll say it with a laugh. Ask a Mormon about Korihor. See if they don't laugh in telling you the story. It's a big joke. I got into an argument earlier this week. I want to get to the teachings of Korihor here in a minute. I got into an argument on Facebook earlier this week with the leader of a Mormon church. Not the big one, not even the second biggest one. A little tiny Mormon church, but if I could get to Russell M. Nosferatu, I'd argue with him about Korihor, and he'd probably laugh too. And this man, I've already mentioned his name too many times in two public forums, and I think he will eventually apologize for having said this. I think he should. And we have enough mutual friends, he and I, of people who say, don't take him at his word on this. He's obviously upset, or you said something to upset him. This guy is a good guy. But he said something to me where he called Korihor a murderer. I said, I think you misunderstand. Korihor is martyred, not a murderer. But as is often the case when you're arguing with Mormons or with really Christians of any kind, he couldn't admit that he was wrong and say, oh, okay, that's right. I'm thinking of someone else. Oh, no problem. That could have been a totally acceptable answer. Instead, to save face, he twisted himself into pretzels trying to explain to me how Korihor was technically a murderer because he cost people their faith, so he spiritually murdered people, which is the most Mormon thing ever. That's something that Mormon bishops do a lot. So they say, oh, they spiritually murdered you because spiritual death is separation from God. So somebody, blah, 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 blah. It devolved into barbs and insults. I am only a man, and I do like to fight. I do like to fight, and I was winning this debate. And guys, I don't want you to think that I'm braggadocious about this, but I pretty well wiped the floor with this guy. And but I was legitimately upset. And I was upset about other things anyway. But I said, what exactly is so evil and awful about Korihor? And he said to me, in the end, he died a beggar. And that was the proof. And I said to him, died a beggar. Really? When here in Utah, while your church and the main Mormon church and several other churches are turning their backs on people here, unhoused people in the cold, and turning them out into the streets, won't open their doors, and people are literally dying in the cold right now. This week, there were 3 days that were declared code blue, which meant that the temperatures were projected to drop below 18 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold enough to freeze the water in your body. And while that's going on, you want to tell me about how the proof that Korihor was evil is that he died a beggar, quote unquote. I gave him a chance to apologize. Friends of ours contacted me to say, Joe, this guy's a good one. He's one of the good ones. Please, give him another chance. And I said, he's got a chance. He's got an open door, an open invitation to come and apologize. But I don't want an apology for me. I won this debate. Like Korihor, I won the debate. I won this argument. I want him to apologize. I said, look, he says this group, he apparently didn't check my profile and see that I am listed as the first herald of the Church of Korihor. He said, you want to join this cult dedicated to a murderer? It's like joining a cult dedicated to Manson. Apparently this very educated man doesn't know that Manson had a cult. It was called the Manson family. Anyways, I And I said, again, you can't substantiate this idea that Korihor was a murderer. And he says, well, you don't believe that Korihor was real. I said, sure, but I still believe in the values that Korihor taught. And there are plenty of people who believe in characters who aren't real. Just look at people who worship Jesus. So I want to tell you about the teachings and sayings. I want you to think, these are the sayings of Korihor that got him murdered. Okay, that got him neglected and turned out his voice taken from him so that he could not support himself, and then eventually trampled to death. And be mindful what George Orwell, wasn't it, that said that if you want to know who is the oppressor, look to who you cannot criticize. Okay, I want to show you some of these teachings that got Korihor killed. First it says, and this Antichrist, whose name was Korihor, and the law could have no hold upon him, began to preach unto the people that there should be no Christ. And after this manner did he preach, saying, why do ye look for a Christ? For no man can know of anything which is to come. Well, that's an interesting thing to say. Basically, he's making an argument against clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is the idea that there are some people who can see the future just by spiritually looking into it, by looking spiritually through magical powers into the future. How do ye know of their surety? Behold, ye cannot know of things which ye do not see. Therefore ye cannot know that there shall be a Christ. So he makes an appeal to empiricism, that there are things that maybe make logical sense, but first of all, you must consider that things that are real in the physical world can be observed with the senses. Ye look forward and say that ye see a remission of your sins, but behold, it is the effect of a frenzied mind. Now, this is bias, right? Everybody has to allow themselves to check. If critical thinking is about anything, it's about checking for your bias. It's about looking to your mind and say, how much of this makes sense on its own versus how much of it is just the effect of a frenzied mind, or in other words, that you want it to be true. Every man fared in this life according to the management of the creature. Therefore, every man prospered according to his genius, and that every man conquered according to his strength. And whatsoever a man did was no crime. Now, this is a concept that Nietzsche talks about in this concept of the Übermensch, which is, or the Superman, which is basically that if there is no God, then there is nothing that is technically right or wrong. Even things that are right or wrong in the name of the state, we know that there are laws. Even Dr. King talks about how, in his letter from Birmingham jail, that some laws are unjust, and that a man who decides to break the law in the name of justice and pointing out how unjust the law is in fact showing the highest respect for the rule of law. In other words, it's not about what is right or what is wrong objectively. The only thing that we have to ask is, how can we as people manage let me just make sure that this is not an emergency. Hold on. I've been doing better about making sure that I'm not neglecting an emergency. Okay, cool. What was I saying? Oh, yes. That there are some things, there's a moral relativism is one thing, right? But I would put to you that the appeal that he is making here is moral subjectivity. That there is our life and what makes sense in our lives, what makes sense in our hearts, and what makes sense to make actual rights in this world. And we have to go defining those. We have to go refining those, because it's not about measuring ourselves against a standard of right and wrong that exists, whether there are humans judging it or not. It's the fact that humans judge. It's the fact that humans experience that makes morality what it is. And then some people have to make up an objectivity. Oh no, it's written in stone. It's written on these tablets. It's written with the finger of God in order to sell each other on it. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. Leading away many women and also men, to commit whoredoms, telling them that when a man was dead, that was the end thereof. Or no, okay, cool. So basically, he's talking about what we have called the light of reason, that you flash in the dark. There is a time in life where you are a star child emitting creative light into the world. And part of your life while you are here is about sex. Even if you're asexual, you're not having sex is a part of your life. It's a part of the choices that you make. And here's what's crucial about this. Notice this language, leading away many women and also men to commit whoredoms. Okay, so if we take whoredoms as being actual prostitution, then what we're talking about here is elucidating that there is one kind of whoredoms, which is just women, and one kind that is just men, or that includes men. Why did we have to have the line, and also men? Was there an assumption here, if you say leading away many women to commit whoredoms, that both the Johns are women and also the workers are women? Is this a lesbian brothel that the man has going? I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. No notes, best OnlyFans ever. But I mean, why is it important to point out also the men? Because if we don't have that line, on one side you could say, okay, so he's basically saying that the men are also working as gigolos, basically. So we have women who are prostitutes and men who, but what does it mean to commit whoredom in this case? In this case, I think it very clear that Joseph Smith means to say that they were fornicating, or in other words, that they were having sex without leave from God because they weren't married. But if that's the case, isn't that usually how it's done? Who is it that commits a whoredom if a person has sex with another person without being married to them? Isn't it both of the people if it's supposedly a sin? This is where I think that this is one of the more overlooked passages that is actually very important. I've talked a little bit about this before, and I'm just going to elucidate this, okay? Just a little bit more. People who are so self-righteous about sexual sin love to tell other people how wrong they are, how immoral they are for having sex with the wrong kind of person, or the wrong individual person, or in the wrong way, or with the wrong tools, whatever those may be. Sorry. Just had to double check and make sure I didn't have actual sex toys out while I said that. Okay. And which, if I had, maybe I could just point to them. And so there's so much judgment about sexual sin, the way that it's described here, about how people have sex or with whom people have sex. But isn't it really it's the people who don't believe in God who are some of the most sexually moral people that I know? Because people who are judged as being sexual deviants because they have sex with members of the same sex or same gender, or because they have sex assuming the role of a gender other than how they were assigned at birth, or because their gender expression is different than what they were assigned at birth, or their gender identity is different, which is a different thing than expression, is different than how it was at birth. Some of those people are the most sexually moral people that I know, because every one of those people that I know personally is a crusader for consent, because they understand something that got lost when we had certain people just defining from a religious standpoint what consent is. Because those people don't really realize when a person's housing is contingent upon their continuing to give sex, that is sex work. When a person's income is contingent upon their committing sex acts, or committing is the wrong word there, performing sex acts, that is sex work. And you can say, no. Sex work is very structured. There's a brothel and there's a pimp, or there's standing on a corner. I'm going to turn off my... Sorry. I started getting NSFW images while I'm talking about sex. Okay, so that, you know, if a person's housing, if a person's income, if a person's stature in society, if a person's political election, if a person's any kind of benefit is or any kind of comfort, any kind of need is served by their performing a sex act or performing a sexual role, that is sex work. And you may have noticed what I'm saying here. Okay, and I'm not looking in the comments because I turned the comments off for me. Okay, this is the trad wife problem that Jenny knows very well, and has spoken to. There is no way. Something just floated right past me. Korihor, is that you? Lucifer, show up, Lord. Dark Lord ain't here. The trad wife trap, as Jenny can speak to this when and if she wants to, is that some relationships, the misogynistic nature of this sexual agenda, the sexual morality agenda of the religious right. And I'm not speaking politically, right? The social norms, the moral social norms of sexual conservatism, if you will, social conservatism, is that there's no way for a person to be in a consenting sexual relationship if they're performing acts or fulfilling a sexual role is part of the requirement for them continuing to sustain and support themselves. That is why it is so toxic that it says here specifically that Korihor led away many women and also men to commit whoredoms. If quote unquote whoredoms are happening and they're not lesbian whoredoms, which again, best OnlyFans ever, no notes, then all whoredoms are men and women. Telling them that when a man was dead, that was the end thereof. Okay. And that makes sense. That if you want to be a good person, you should be a good person for the sake of being a good person. And that's going to be something you're going to have to define for yourself. It's something society has to define. It is morally subjective. Just get over it. But then to look at it and say, if we're going to establish rights and say, well, all rights are given to us by God and not by human being individuals, then it's no wonder people think that atheists have no morals, because we don't believe in gods. And yet it is mainly atheists that I know who, again, are the ones who are crusaders for consent. Sexual consent is the best example I know of how people who claim to be religiously moral are wrong and hypocrites, frankly. Because I do not teach, says Korihor, because I do not teach this people to bind themselves down under the foolish ordinances and performances which are laid down by ancient priests to usurp power and authority over them, to keep them in ignorance. Really think about that. We're not going to have time to go over all of these. Again, Korihor is a treasure trove of wisdom. It's shocking that Joseph Smith created this man and then he got demonized as a villain for 200 years. Ye say that this people is a free people. Behold, I say they are in bondage. Ye say that those ancient prophecies are true, but behold, I say that ye do not know that they are true. Ye say that this people is a guilty and a fallen people because of the transgression of a parent. Behold, I say that a child is not guilty because of its parents. Did you catch that? This is Lockean tabula rasa. It's starting from the presumption that every child is born completely innocent, that they cannot be, even though this is not written down anywhere, there's plenty of reason to believe that traits of personality, ranging from mental illness to neurological conditions, are inherited from parent to child. We choose a myth in believing that every child is born innocent of and without any due punishment for what happened to their parents and what their parents did for a reason. This is a perhaps untrue thing. I sometimes compare mythology. There's a great example given by Sam Harris where he talks about all guns are loaded. Of course, it's untrue. Anybody who's handled arms knows that not all guns are loaded. One of the reasons why people say the phrase all guns are loaded is because it has to do with safety. If you treat them like they're all loaded, then you're never going to wind up having an accident where somebody thinks, I definitely pulled the clip out. I definitely opened up the chamber and pulled out the round. Oh crap. I'll tell you a little quick story. I went over to my father-in-law's. He's going to love that I told this story. My wife's parents are very Mormon. I went over one Sunday when Molly and I were living in Mesa, Arizona still, or living near Mesa. And we were brand new. Our daughter had just been born. No, it was when Molly was still pregnant with Scarlett, who's 18 now. Weird. And I went over and I hated Sundays, right? Because they just want to talk about church. We just went over there to get a free meal. And then I'm like, but I did enjoy sitting in the lazy boy in my in-laws' big living room. They had this big, magnificent house. I went over to the television, which is behind two panels, the old 1970s kind of like hemp netting. You have a cabinet, so it's like it's a wood cabinet door, but it's got like the netting. I went to open this up so I could turn the TV on. They were one of the few Mormon families we can watch TV on Sundays. And the television had a great big gaping hole right in the center of it. Very clearly a bullet hole. Now, mind you, I know my very Mormon father-in-law doesn't love everything that they put on television. But I thought that was extreme even for him. And so I went and I approached him. Long story short, I got my father-in-law into a lot of trouble with my mother-in-law when it was found out that he had broken the rules because it was colder outside. It's never that cold in Mesa. But it was cold outside, and he was showing his son some of his new pistols that he had bought. And they were cleaning them. And instead of doing it outside on the porch where they're supposed to do it, they were doing it in the kitchen. And he decided to show his sons the action on this new pistol he had bought, and it had a round in the chamber. And they looked all over the house to try and find where this round had landed. But because that netting, because that mesh, that netting on the front panel was so loose because these are panels that had been installed like in the 70s. That bullet had slipped right in through the middle, right in through that fabric, and then it had healed up. And that bullet had landed in the television, and nobody had known where. And so after hunting for it, they just figured, well, if we can't find it, nobody will ever find it, and they won't mention to mom that an accident happened in the house. Well, Joe found it. And my mother-in-law was furious. Oh my gosh. The flying spaghetti monster save us all, but my mother-in-law was furious. Anyways, this is why I tell you this. Whoops. Oh yes, the myth is that all guns are loaded. It's a value that we hold and sustain knowing that the statement is false. It's not true that all guns are loaded, but it's important to treat them all like they're loaded. Similarly, it's not true that a person's character, their persona, their free will, their ability to choose has nothing to do with their parents or inheriting anything from their parents. Or certainly it doesn't have anything, it's impossible to say that it doesn't have anything to do with how they were raised by their parents. But we have to go from the baseline of saying, even if it's not true, for justice, for the sake of well-being, for the sake of making a best possible life for everybody, let us assume that all children are innocent. And then if we say that that's the case, then that's the case. Innocence is one of those things. We are the ones who are making these values. Let's make that the value. How do we justify that? Where is God in deciding that? God writes, if we leave it to God, you have all these passages in the Book of Mormon and in the Bible, in Scripture, that say that God visits the punishment for sin on families unto the third and fourth generation. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to the moral complexity of sin and children, God is in the wrong. Ye also say that Christ shall come. But behold, I say that ye do not know that there shall be a Christ. We talked about clairvoyance. Ye lead away this people according to your own desires, that ye may glut yourselves with the labors of their hands. Right? We talked about this. Korihor is the George Carlin of the Book of Mormon. This is the moment where he goes, there's an invisible man, and he needs money. Right? Yea, they durst not make use of that which is their own, lest they should offend their priests, who do yoke them according to their desires, and have brought them to believe that they should, if they did not according to their words, offend some unknown being, who they say is God, a being who never has been seen or known, who never was, nor ever will be. Woo! Okay, so when we get back to the story. Now, when the high priest and the chief judge saw the hardness of his heart, yea, when they saw that he would revile even against God, they would not make any reply to his words, but they caused that he should be bound, and they delivered him into the hands of the officers, and sent him to the land of Zarahemla, that he might be brought before Alma and the chief judge, who was the governor over all the land. This is one of the best cases I know for that Joseph Smith made this story up. And what Joseph Smith, who was a very gifted orator, he was, and a very gifted narrator. He was good at spinning a yarn. And you can tell because at the beginning of this chapter, I've often taken heat about calling this my out to lunch theory, that Joseph Smith just got hungry or tired or something. As he's telling the story, you can see very plainly that he starts to lose track of the plot. Now, here's something interesting to note about Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith is treated by Mormons today as if he's a dummy. Joseph Smith, there's this whole, frankly, shit-kicking, country boy narrative about Joseph Smith. That's not true. It's not real. Joseph Smith read. In fact, now Terrell Givens of the Maxwell Institute at BYU has published, has announced something that even many of us Exmos didn't know, that Joseph Smith, they have found a list of books that Joseph Smith donated to the library in Nauvoo, Illinois. When he was instrumental in starting the Nauvoo library. And we have the books that he donated. I'm just going to check the comments, make sure nobody's screaming this doesn't work. Okay, good. And now we know that Joseph Smith was in fact very well read on theology. He was very well read on philosophy. And his mother, even in the book that usually is used to claim that Joseph Smith was a dummy, she says he was widely read, that he read widely and deeply. Okay. Joseph Smith is telling us this story. Oops. Okay. And as he's going along, at the beginning, he reiterates 2 or 3 times that there was nothing that these guys could do to Korihor, because in their culture, in their society, it was against the law to arrest someone on account of their beliefs. But look what happened. They arrest Korihor 3 times because what he's telling people is dangerous. Joseph Smith, if you don't know, I was studying this one. Joseph Smith participated in a debate club, basically, when he was a teenager, prior to his writing the Book of Mormon, translating the Book of Mormon. This guy knows how to debate, but he wasn't a particularly good writer. He wasn't very good at actually sitting down and spelling words out, and actually, that's true. He wasn't a great speller. He was probably dyslexic, frankly. And so he didn't have a very easy time with actually putting pen to paper. But his mother tells us that he would spend long nights spinning a long yarn telling people in his family about the inhabitants, fictional stories that he made up off the top of his head, about the inhabitants of the Americas, just like the ones here in the Book of Mormon, just like the story of Korihor. And that makes complete sense. It says, and it came to pass that the curse was not taken off of Korihor, but he was cast out and went from house to house begging for his food. This is repeated twice. Now the knowledge of what had happened unto Korihor was immediately published throughout all the land. Yea, the proclamation was sent forth by the chief judge to all the people in the land, declaring unto those who had believed in the words of Korihor that they must speedily repent, lest the same judgments would come upon them. And the last verse and the last words of this chapter, Alma 16 in the original Book of Mormon, now Alma 30. And thus we see that the devil will not support his children at the last day, but doth speedily drag them down to hell. Fellowship, Korihor is not a villain. Korihor is a hero. I said that with the first book that I wrote, which I apparently took out of this room. The first book that I wrote about how I became an atheist by preaching Mormonism in South America for 2 years is called The Korihor Argument. And I was a little surprised at the beginning how the response to it was very good. I sold several copies in the first couple of days. It became one of the top 10 bestsellers on Amazon under the category of, I think, atheism, or books about atheism and agnosticism. and even books about Mormonism. And then it dropped off, and then nobody bought any more copies of it. And I don't resent any of that. I get it now. It is still one of my favorite books, one of my favorite ones to read. And I am working on the audiobook version because there's a lot of people who say they would love to know the story of how I became an atheist, including the story of how I flowchart, how Korihor very clearly wins the debate with Alma. Because I'll talk about that at another time. No, I'm going to talk about it now. Korihor's debate with Alma is about how you have to have empirical proof or rational proof. You either have to have empirical, meaning something you can perceive with the senses in the physical world, or something that you can see by a result of a scientific method of experimentation and then collecting the data. Okay, that's empirical. Or rational. Okay, even though you can't see, and there's some things that you can't see through experimentation, but make sense that if they were true, then you would logically conclude this and this and this and this and this and say, so it must be that this is true. His case was, unless you can prove God empirically or rationally, he doesn't exist. Or you shouldn't, or at least you shouldn't presume that he exists. And that you shouldn't give money to people who will hold you hostage or your family hostage, emotionally blackmailing you. Because obviously they're just too lazy to work for themselves. They're obviously just trying to do something to usurp your time, your energy, your money, your effort, and to bring you down into bondage, as he says, by making it so that you can't enjoy your life because you have to be emotionally blackmailed into feeling guilty for every thought, for every desire, for everything. You notice how religion starts out, it's all optimistic, it's all hope and dreams and rainbows. Mormonism itself was so full of optimism. People still talk about it. I have lots of conversations starting a church about Korihor. I've had so many conversations with people who want to talk about about early Mormonism. I talk about early Mormonism more than I ever wanted to. But then all of a sudden you see things starting to come up, like the temperance movement, or in other words, Joseph Smith, who was an alcoholic, very clearly a drunk. Okay, let's not say that word. I apologize for that word. Who was an alcoholic, who was the son of an alcoholic, so that makes sense. His father was known as the town alcoholic, where they grew up. Okay, he had a habit. He had a real chemical dependency here. Okay, now all of a sudden was the head of a church where people began to say that it was prohibited to drink alcohol, even though most Mormons did drink. And Joseph Smith himself was known to drink heavily, and his father was known for experiencing visions while he drank. Okay, which makes sense for a man like Joseph Smith. Okay, a child is not guilty. Okay, but a child has his father's DNA and his mother's DNA. And that was the story of Joseph Smith. Okay, and it makes sense. Now, this is why I think that Korihor is important, and why I decided at the end, if there was going to be a church for atheists, I would call it the Church of Korihor. When I came up with this idea, it started with the fact that this time I am going to grab something. I'm going to grab a prop. Many of you have seen it before. I want to show you something. Okay? This right here, yes, framed, is the letter with which I was excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints a little over 10 years ago. 11 years ago, 2013. You can see it's been with me a while, this picture. This letter and I have gone from place to place. Now, 10 years prior to receiving this letter from the Mormon Church, I had lived as what we call a Jack Mormon, or a closeted ex-Mormon. meaning that I didn't live to the standards, didn't believe in the Gospels, told people that I was an ex-Mormon, even though I didn't leave the church officially. I was kicked out. I was kicked out by my choice when I was told, because I didn't believe in God and because I believed that Joseph Smith is a drunk, frankly, I'm just going to use the word, I'm sorry, I'm just going to toxic this. Because I believed that Joseph Smith was a pervert and that he was a drunk, that he was an amoral person, and that Mormonism is founded on lies, that I had to leave the church or they would kick me out for teaching apostasy. And that's exactly what I insisted they do. I said, let's have closure, you and I. Let's have it out. I want my chance to stand in front of ordained men of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And yes, they were all men by bylaws of the Mormon Church. And show these people, I don't believe what you believe, and I'm not leaving. If I am no longer going to be Mormon, it's because you have to throw me out. And then they had to actually do it. And in the most loving way, because this man who wrote this, President Mitchell, who wrote this letter, he actually is a very good, decent man. And I talked to him and had this conversation with him, and we came to terms and understanding this is what I wanted. It's what the church wanted, and it was a chance for us to get closure. Now, here's the issue. When this letter happened to John DeLynn of Mormon Stories, it was not nearly as healthy. It was mean. It was mean-spirited. It was cruel. When it happened to Kate Kelly, I believe the same year, it was around the same time that mine happened, actually, but nobody knew who I was. Kate Kelly of the Ordained Women Movement, same situation. When it happened to my friend Jeremy Runnels, who wrote the CES letter, same situation. Now, every one of us, I'm sure, cried. I cried, and this was healthy for me. This was good for me, and I cried when I got it. Okay. Now the Mormon Church is talking about kicking people out en masse because they don't live up to the gospel standards of the church, or calling them back in to rejoin the church's congregations and sit in the pews. And Modern Ape, are you asking me if they paid me? They did not pay me. They should have. Sorry, I'm turning my comments back off while I finish this. Here's the thing. I was shocked when I went on to Mormon Stories Facebook page and discovered somebody posting about how they had gone to quitmormon.org, which is the website where people quit the church, quit the Mormon church. It's run by a man, forgive me if I get his name right, forgive me if I get his name wrong. I believe it's Charles Nagel, an attorney here in Utah, who gathers people's resignations through his website, through a nonprofit that he runs, and then takes their resignation letters over to the Mormon Church's headquarters and gives them a letter saying this person has resigned, and they have proven that they are their identity. They've proven their identity by getting the letter notarized. You need to remove them from the Mormon Church, which by law they are supposed to allow you to do. It's a little complicated, the law, and I'm not an attorney. But the Mormon Church, I have now met several people who have said they have started using that after using quitmormon.org to try and quit the Mormon Church, the church wouldn't let them out. That the church is starting to, so on the one side, they're starting to mass excommunicate people. On the other side, they're starting to let people, they're trying to keep people from being able to leave. And I said, I know that it's toxic for most people to experience what I experienced by getting that letter and getting kicked out for apostasy. But to be honest with you, it may come down to the only way you can quit religion, quit somebody's church, is to commit apostasy. Now, I had to tell people that Joseph Smith was a liar and a pervert to get kicked out for apostasy. But one of the other ways that you get kicked out for apostasy, according to the Priesthood Leadership Manual of the Mormon Church, is if you join another church. Which makes sense if you're still Christian and you go out and join another church, but a lot of Christian churches don't require you to leave your prior church or to join their church in order to sit in the pews. And the same thing with converting to Judaism or Islam or becoming a Buddhist. You can do all these things without having to formally join a congregation. But then some of them you can actually join, and then you can be kicked out for apostasy, which is ironic. But what does an atheist do? Most people who leave the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in my experience at least, become atheists. Same is true about Jehovah's Witnesses. Same is true about Seventh-day Adventists. Same is true about evangelicals, and they will become ex-evangelicals. And it makes total sense to me as an ex-Mormon atheist. So how do we join a church that is atheist? We can join the Satanic Temple, but a lot of us are actually turned off by the idea. I make jokes about that I work for the devil because of my podcast, Hellfire Agency. But I don't actually believe in the devil. Obviously, I don't. Now, I would join the Satanic Temple to get kicked out if that's what it took these days. But I said there ought to be another option. There ought to be a way of stating, it's not that I believe in the devil. It's not that I believe in this creature. It's that I believe in atheism, or in other words, I believe in critical thinking. So I said for a long time, if I could start a church where people could join so they can get kicked out of their current church, we'd call it the Church of Carl Sagan, who in the demon-haunted world gave us some of the best critical thinking advice of anybody in history. But I guarantee you, and I'm sure Sasha Sagan, and I'm sure Andrewian would agree with this, that's his daughter and his wife, would agree with me, Carl Sagan would have hated that. Carol Blue, the wife of Christopher Hitchens, or Hitch, I'm sure would agree that I would, as I have said, or we would call it the Church of Christopher Hitchens, who's now passed. Both of them have passed. I'm sure Carol Blue, his wife, would agree. No, Hitch would have hated that. That's a great way to dishonor the memory of these men. If I could name the church after anybody, it would have to be a fictional character who is an atheist, but who stood in defiance of religious dogma. And that's why I said it has to be Korihor. Korihor is the hero. He's my hero. And as I started to found, I reached out to a handful of people and asked them, would you sign as a director for the Church of Korihor if I started it? And I told them about this idea about starting a church where people could quit other churches and become apostates. And we would just send, if they wanted, we would send their certificates to their church and say, kick this person out for apostasy. They have sworn an oath of reason that they abandon all gods and seek only the light of reason. And they disavow membership in every other church. They're ours. You can't keep them. And then they have to. They have to excommunicate you. They have to kick you out according to their own bylaws, or they don't abide by their own bylaws. And I said, why wait to resign? Lean into excommunication. Go get it. And a handful of friends of mine, like my friend Jenny, and my friend Nate, and my friend David, the instant that I put it to them, said, yes, I will be a director of this Church of Korihor. And at first it was fun. And at first we thought, this will be great. As I started to develop it, though, and we founded the church, we signed the papers, we filed it with the state of Utah. Yes, we did. Yes, we absolutely did. We paid $59. I discovered that I didn't have $59. I had to phone a friend because I hadn't worked. I worked so hard on starting the Church of Korihor, launching a website, drafting the articles of incorporation, coming up with new emails, filling out all of the required information, applying for all of the government entity numbers, etc. I spent so much of my time, I forgot that, well, I didn't forget to work, but suffice it to say, I missed a couple paychecks there because I was spending all my time on this. And then I went to file the paperwork finally with the state of Utah and discovered that my debit card bounced. And I went, no. And I went to open up my app, my bank app, and discovered I had $58. I have two friends named David. I went to my other friend David because David, my first friend David, had already signed. I can ask him for money too. So I went to my other friend David, who is a communication science director for Nestle. And I said, hey, what are the chances that you could loan a guy $59 so he can start the Church of Korihor? And if no, what are the chances you could loan him $1? But like right now, because I need to file the articles of incorporation for the Church of Korihor. And I got a response back, haha, the Church of Korihor, be serious. I am serious. Really? Yeah. I'm at the state office. I'm filing the paperwork now. And he's like, Joe, get back to work at your normal job. Here's $100. That's why the first line of More Money Than God starts, we built this hall on borrowed bills. I started this movement literally with money I borrowed from a friend. And within 8 weeks, it has become the most important thing I've ever done with my life, apart from raising 3 beautiful, very autistic children and my beautiful relationship with my lovely wife. As I saw people come forward to say how much healing they have had, listening to these hymns, listening to these sermons, delivering sermons, people who didn't even join our church. And when I said, would you give a sermon to a church you didn't join? Agreed and showed up and realized how fortunate I was to have friends who would help me make this thing happen. I began to realize that Korihor was not a way to quit other people's religions. Korihor really was the myth, the legend about what it means to stand up for truth. I wanted to show you a quick parable I came up with this morning, and then we'll close out, and I want to show you a video. And again, the StreamYard link is in there if people want to linger longer to take the oath of reason or to witness to Korihorism after our closing hymn. I want to tell you this quick parable. Imagine for a moment that you were born in a mist of darkness. And as you emerge into this mist of darkness, you notice that there's another person, hopefully, I hope it's true for you, another person who you could see because they were near to you. Maybe probably a mother, maybe a father, maybe a guardian. And you started to walk with them in the midst of darkness. And as you went, you said, where are we going? They said, there's a post with a light switch on it that will illuminate everything. And we'll finally see where we're going. All right. You're just a child, so you don't know better, so you go along with them. And as you do, more and more people emerge from the mist of darkness and get closer to you, and you begin to see that they are also looking for the post where the light switch is that will illuminate everything. And then you are a veritable herd of humans wandering in the dark looking for the post, that everybody knows there's a post. Everybody knows that this post has a light switch, and it's got to be. That if this light switch and this post are out there, we're going to find it if we have to wander all over to find it, so that we can finally flip the light switch and illuminate everything. And then it dawns on you while everyone is wandering and everybody you encounter is wandering, looking for the post with the light switch that will illuminate everything. That if you can see people as they get nearer to you, then this mist of darkness isn't that dark. If you see people, there's light. That's the science of how light works. And you can say, oh no, your eyes adjusted to the dark. Your eyes don't adjust to the dark. Your eyes adjust to the light. And if it's less light, then there's light. If there were no light, you wouldn't see anybody at all ever. And it dawns on you that if you only see people near to you, it's because there's a light wherever you are. It's a parable. Give me room to play with this one. It should dawn on you, if you're a reasonably intelligent person, that means you are glowing. And the reason why people see you is because you glow. And the reason you see them is because you glow. And if you stop looking for the post with the light switch that will illuminate everything, it might dawn on you that if you looked within, you might find a dimmer switch. That if you were to undim your dimmer switch, you could illuminate your light brighter. And the other people around you would be drawn to your light. Now, along the way, if you did this, other people will come to you to say, no. That inner light isn't real. Only the light from the post is real. And we're going to find the post with the light switch that illuminates everything, because light within is not real. Only light from outside of yourself can be real. And we've been looking for the post with the light switch on it. You're not going to illuminate other people's way, because then they'll stop looking for the post. And we've spent our whole lives looking for this post with the light switch on it. It's called sunk cost fallacy, right? Throwing good money after bad because you've already spent so much money on something that's a lost cause. Sunk cost fallacy, it's called. You're going to notice that there's a lot of people in the world who've been through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, looking for God, looking for meaning and reason that comes from outside of themselves, because they believe that no meaning is real unless something else is giving it to them, unless there is a post with a light. And that is their rational argument for why God has to be real. To these people, it's not that they're stupid. So many very intelligent people believe in God. Francis Collins is always the example. He's considered one of the smartest people in the world. He was a former head of the National Institutes of Health. And yet, he's a Christian. And he'll tell everybody he's a believing Christian. You don't have to be dumb to be religious. Most of us who are intelligent atheists came from some religious background in our history. Okay? These people's pain is wrapped up. Why did I have that miscarriage? Why did I have to lose my mom or dad, or both? Why did I have to grow up in the foster care system? Why did I have to grow up unhoused or experience unhousing? Why did I have to be born gay? Why did I have to be born with this problem or that problem? Why did I have this illness? Why did I lose a child to illness? These are real trauma, real pain. And the sunk cost fallacy of looking for God to have a plan is so real in these people's lives that, of course, when you take and reach your dimmer switch and turn it up and say, my meaning comes from within, by looking at the universe and saying, if you just understand a little bit of math, if you just understand a little bit of science, all of this makes sense and you can see more. You glow with knowledge about the real world as it is. Of course, those people are going to look to you and say, no, evolution is not true. No, of course, the world is flat and not round. No, of course, Apollo 11 never landed on the moon. Of course they come around and try and tell you. They will say, you're just trying to prove the Bible wrong, and it's important to me that the Bible is right, God is right, and you are wrong. Because they have sunk cost fallacy. Their pain feels less valid. They feel like you are attacking them and telling them that their pain is not valid. You have to be able to turn your dimmer switch back up and protect it. And say, my light from within me, my meaning from within me, my morals from within me have nothing to do with whether or not your pain is real. I am illuminating you right now, and you can go on and look for your post if you want. If that's what you need, good luck to you. You can turn back to me and my friends who are here. Some of them, their dimmer switch is broken. And sure enough, you look at their dimmer switch, they're like, I don't know. I turn on my dimmer switch and it doesn't do anything. Well, that sucks, man. Something's wrong. I don't know if we'll figure out how to fix it, but maybe somebody will come around and help us. Maybe we'll learn how to fix it together. But even if we don't, stick with me. I'll turn up my light bright enough for you. That's why there's a line in the song, in our hymn, We're Going Home, that says, sorry. My friend, if you choose, oh boy, sorry. My friend, if you choose to be free, I'll light your path if you walk with me. We won't figure out what makes suffering meaningful for everybody. I'm going to find meaning in my suffering, and anybody who goes with me. I'm going to help you to find the meaning in yours. And it's not going to be because we find a post that illuminates everything. Objective meaning. I don't believe it's real, guys. Objective reality, sure. Objective meaning, bullshit. No. That meaning is from within. Meaning comes from within. And there's real meaning to be had by understanding science, by understanding intuition, and by looking within and discovering ourselves. That's what I get from Korihor. Korihor represents that light of reason in Joseph Smith, of all people, who was a pervert and an a-hole. But even he had doubts about God. And his doubts won. So he had to kill him. Think about that. His doubts won the debate. 3 debates. So he had to kill him. To have faith. What a tragedy. What a tragedy. And then what he did with that faith, coerced young women, girls, into relationships with him that were inappropriate. Won't get into details about it. What happened to Fanny Alger? What happened to Mary Elizabeth Rawlins Lightner? No relation. I mean, we're all related to trees somewhere up the line, but no immediate relation. Because of faith? It's just wrong. It's wrong. It was a way of justifying amoral behavior by saying that God gave him power. I'm going to start a video now that we are going to This is our first devotional video. I'm probably going to, don't go looking for it right away, because I'm probably going to have to change some things in it. There's still some graphics I'm still working on, but this is pretty close. I want you guys to know, well, first let me say this. So on the website, on korihor.org, you're going to see that there's going to be a link to a fund that we're putting together to raise $1,000 to start monthly promotion of a series of devotional videos that we'll run as YouTube ads. This video will be the first of them. The second one will be The Light of Reason, which we showed earlier this week. And then the third one will be Who is Korihor, which will be this sermon, briefly encapsulated in a 7-ish minute video like this one. That was a 45-minute sermon I preached, the first sermon I preached for Korihorism, and now baked down into 7 minutes-ish. I want you guys to know that I believe that Korihor is not real. But I believe Korihorism may be the most real thing that we really need to believe in. And it has nothing to do with faith. It has to do with rationalism. And if it doesn't, then let's change it. That's why I believe in the 12 values of Korihorism, which you're going to see here in a moment in this video, if it works. I believe in this. As I told Jenny Gage when I asked her to become second Herald of the Church of Korihor, I've never believed in anything like I believe in this. Amen. Home. I want to tell you the story of the Korihor sigil, or the Koaz. That's the symbol of the Church of Korihor. Now, we're a church for godless people, so it's probably no surprise that this story, it's kind of geeky. In April 1970, Apollo 13 was on the third mission to land on the moon. But 2 days into the journey, an oxygen tank in their service module exploded, crippling the spacecraft and leaving astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes in a desperate fight to get home alive. They had to shut down most of the electronics on their spacecraft, including the guidance computer that charted their way home. But on their way back toward Earth, they discovered that they were coming in too shallow and too fast. Unless they corrected course and slowed down, they would bounce off the Earth's atmosphere into space, where they surely would die. They figured that they could manually fire the lunar module's engine, but they would only have 14 seconds of fuel. Now, if you're going to be stuck in outer space without a guidance computer, the guy you want with you is Jim Lovell. When Lovell was the command module pilot on Apollo 8, Mission Control had him rehearse this exact scenario. Astronaut means sailor of the stars, but really every sailor is an astronaut, because one of humanity's greatest instruments has been the sextant, an instrument to judge your place by measuring your placement to the stars. Well, the Apollo 13 service module had a modern version of a sextant built into it. And Jim Lovell was the first man in space to navigate to the moon and back, at least partly, with only the stars to go by. But Apollo 13 had a problem that Apollo 8 did not. Debris from the explosion obscured Lovell's view so that he couldn't see the stars through the sextant. This is where it would be easy to give up. The crew of Aquarius could blame Houston, Houston could blame them. They could despair and shut down. But none of those options were a way home. That's when Jim Lovell came up with a pretty innovative idea, the Crewman Optical Alignment Sight, or COAS. Now, the COAS is basically like the crosshairs of a rifle scope, designed to align the two parts of the spacecraft while they were docking. Now, Lovell fixed that bullseye instead on the only fixed point in space that he could see through the lunar module window, Earth. They chose the Earth's terminator line, the line between the day and night sides of the Earth, as the reference point, keeping the Earth's terminator line lined up in the COAS, with Jim controlling the yaw and the burn and Fred manning the pitch, and Jack timing the burn on his watch. They fired the engines and corrected that angle in 14 seconds.
Guide me by morning light, keeping home in my sight. With doubts and dreams take flight. We flash in the dark, so let's flash bright. On a mission to save ourselves, break with dogma, with these shells. My friend, if you choose to be free, I'll light your path if you'll walk with me. We're going home to where we'll find a world where life is worth the climb. One day we will crash and we will die. Oh, my friends, that's not tonight.
I remember when Apollo 13, the movie, came out, Tom Hanks says to Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon, 0 Degrees, "Gentlemen, what are your intentions?" "I'd like to go home. You and I are living in an emergency. We can't see the stars, and our guidance computer isn't working. We have to line up the real world in the COAS. We have to use courage. We have to use tenacity and innovation. We're going to have to science the shit out of this if we're going to make a world that we want to live in. And to do that, you need godless people. This is our time. This is the time when we need atheists and agnostics to get religion, but instead of a religion about God, we need a religion about us. We are our saviors. This is our time."
No more shadows in our mind. Leave the fears and past behind. On this pale blue dot, we will make our stand. Light within, we will be our hands. We're going home to where we'll find a world where life is worth the climb. One day we will crash and we will die. Oh, my friends, that's not tonight. Come on, science, our path is clear. Strangers once, our re-entry nears. Sighting land, we'll quit this sea. I'm going home. Who will come with me?
I'll fail. I'll start again. I'm looking for people who have the courage to fail with me until we find all the ways to fail, or by some stroke of luck, we go home. Amen.
By math and science, our path is clear. Strangers once, our re-entry nears. Sighting land, we'll quit